question as to which case was I most proud of, I immediately thought of, well, the largest estate case was always fun to talk about. A case where once we got an estate open, we were a defendant in several lawsuits, or where nephews found out they weren't going to inherit their rich aunt's money, and they thought she had to be incompetent as she omitted them. And they decided to take a guardianship, or try to attempt a guardianship on her, which we prevailed and found she was quite sane, and she had a lot of reasons not to leave them any money. But the one case that produced a lot of results for me was a guardianship that came from a woman living down county with 40 cats. Alice Harper of the Asheville County Adult Protective Service contacted me and asked if I could help with this case. Glenn Osborne of Victims of Crime was also involved. We established a guardianship for her and set her up in clean conditions at an assisted living center. From that point, what we've found out as more and more calls were coming is Alice and Bart had an inventory of these people that really needed to have advocates. We then worked with the Human Service Department with Jack Howell, as well as Sandy Fletcher, and within a short period of time, we had established through 5 other attorneys who agreed to do guardianship work at no cost. We, asked the judge, and he even agreed to waive the fees for these guardianships. So that was the one case that, although it might have been a perfunctory guardianship, it produced a lot of results because that volunteer guardianship program continues today. Thank you.
While a law student for one of the common pleas judges in our county, it was on a cutting-edge legal issue. I wrote a memorandum, and he came to me and asked me if I wouldn't mind whether or not he cut and pasted a significant portion of my memorandum and incorporated it into his opinion. Now, imagine how proud I was at that. I wasn't even a lawyer yet. I was even prouder when the case was appealed, and the 11th District Court of Appeals actually cited that section of that judge's opinion as being the basis for their rationale in deciding the case. Again, not even a lawyer yet. My thoughts then turned to my years as a prosecutor when I first came to the Assistant City Solicitor's position in the city of Ashtabula. I noticed a lot of cases that were sitting, and they were welfare fraud cases. I've always been inclined to ask the question, why? Why is that? And it was explained to me what a difficult prosecution those cases were. Without going into details, they were very cumbersome. They were very document intensive. They involved multiple agencies and multiple parties filtering the process. So once the question why was asked, my next question is what if? And my what if concerned, why can't we use an old banking law that was designed to curb banking fraud for this purpose? And we used it. We prosecuted a number of those cases. And $1.2 million later, the state of Ohio, the state auditor, Mr. Ferguson, came calling, wondering what we were doing in Ashtabula County to where we could recover that amount of money in the amount of time that we did it. Ultimately, I received commendations from the state of Ohio through the auditor's office as well as the United States Inspector General's office. I had a small career as a speaker because of that. But in thinking about what I'm most proud of, and it's actually a case that involves both a client, an attorney, and a caseworker. And it involved a caseworker with a mental health issue, or a client with a mental health problem, happened to be on our court. The caseworker came to our court, asked that I allow this client access to a special program in Cleveland. The client stayed 30 days in the program. He came back cured, never offended again, actually, in my court at least. At about 6 months or 60 days later, we got a bill for $60,000. I sent the bill on to the agency. The caseworker was very surprised at receiving a $60,000 bill, and it occurred to both her and the attorney that no one thought about who was paying the tab. I was able to not only affect that individual defendant's life, but I was able to find funding sources to pay that bill. Both the attorney and the caseworker kept their job. So that I'm particularly proud of. Thank you.
Ashtabula County Juvenile Court for 18 years, and I'm running for the seat that my boss is retiring from. I don't have one case that I'm particularly proud of. I have a number of success stories, and I'm proud of every single one of them. And each success story is a success to that person. It might not be what you might think is successful, but for them, it's a success story. I have cases where children have found new parents. I have children who graduated from high school and are now working in our county, and they never thought they'd even see that graduation day. I have parents who have been drug-free and been reunited with their children after working hard and diligently with Ashtabula County Children's Services Board. These are all success stories. And I have some stories as well that you might not think is a success, but to them it is. Joey had never lived in a typical family before, ever. And when he had to be removed from what were his biological parents, he was placed in foster care, and he made it in foster care. For how long? Maybe 3 months. But for Joey, that was the first time that he had been in a typical home, where you sat down and ate dinner every night, where somebody was up when you went to school in the morning and got your breakfast and sent you out. And for Joey, for 3 months, that's a success story. And we have those here. So there's just not one case for me. Every day I have a different success story, and I'm proud of each and every one of them. Thank you.
The judge must reflect and maintain our society's respect for the rule of law. A judge's bench is actually elevated in part as a symbol of our society's respect for the institution that he or she represents. This allows the judge to see everyone and everything in the courtroom in order to maintain control. I believe everyone in a courtroom understands that a judge has power. What defines a good judge, and by extension, a good judicial temperament, in my estimation, is how that judge wields or exercises this judicial authority. I believe an ability to give and gain and maintain respect is the most basic and essential trait of a good judge. Respect must be accorded to the parties, the attorneys, social workers, counselors, witnesses, law enforcement officers, interested parties, all stakeholders. Respect is the building block upon which our entire legal system is based. We are a democracy. Accordingly, the most critical tool in maintaining order and the rule of law is to remain respectful to everyone who appears in the courtroom. If we expect citizens to respect our institutions, we must grant respect and recognize the value of the individuals who appear before that court. A judge must always reflect through her or his actions that the court will remain fair and impartial so that all parties shall have confidence that their case will be fairly and impartially decided. Every case has a human component. Consequently, a judge must always be thoughtful, measured, and balanced in all matters affecting litigants or the court's business. Call them as you see them, be fair, and let the law dictate where you go. For the past 21 years, I've worked every day of my professional life in the busiest court in this county. I have seen people at their best. I've seen them at their worst. I've seen the impact that my decisions have had on people, and I understand this human component. I believe a judge must be humble, approachable, creative, deft at finding common ground, and at least as smart as their colleagues without being overtly brilliant or intensely academic. The juvenile probate judge is one of 4 common pleas court judges. This judge is required to work with attorneys and other judges. This judge must have a knack for bringing together colleagues of different minds. No judge should ever be insecure, heavy-handed, or more concerned with being recognized as the symbolic head of the court. A judge cannot be arbitrary or vindictive. A judge must have genuine concern for every litigant and every member of the court family. There are times when it's absolutely necessary for a judge to be firm. However, being firm should never involve threats or demeaning language. In my 21 years on the bench, the parties appearing before me understand that I conduct myself to the highest standards and that I expect them to receive the same from the public. My judicial temperament is well known. Voters will not have to guess or hope that I possess the appropriate judicial temperament. I have not changed my demeanor one iota simply because I'm in an election season. I practice the golden rule. Thank you.
I practiced in juvenile court. Juvenile probate court are about emotion. In most counties, actually, juvenile court is called family court. We talk about children, we deal with parents, we talk about custody, we talk about visitation, we talk about decedents, all things, and guardianships, all things that require and are very emotional for the people before that judge in probate and juvenile court. Each case is very different, and a jurist's reaction should also be different for each case. There are times where I'm sure I have appeared angry or upset. I feel that it is part of my job to reach the people in front of me in a way that they understand. I work with a lot of children, and it's hard to believe, but there are some parents who do not parent their children. There are some parents who feel they should be friends with their children instead of parenting, including disciplining their children. There are some children who come before me. I am the first person who has ever disciplined them. I am sitting in their parental role. That puts me in a position of parenting and making sure that that child can be what he or she needs to be upon graduation or turning 18. Just last week, I call him a juvenile or a youth, but he's not actually anymore. He is 19 years old. He was in court because he now has a child. He was before me on some parenting issues regarding his baby and the mother of his child. After the hearing, he came up to me and he said, quote, "You saved my life." Now, that was probably a little dramatic, but he said nobody had ever talked to him the way that I did. And I raised my voice and I pointed my finger and I told him what he needed to do. He graduated. He actually got a vocation from this very building we're sitting in right now. He has his choice of employment and he is loving his life, and he thanked me for it because his parent had never said, "You will go to school, you will graduate, and you will become something in your life." I was the first one that had ever done that. So yeah, am I hard on some of my kids? You bet. If you have potential and you need a little finger pointing at you, I'm going to do it. These kids deserve it. A judge just doesn't decide facts and deliver verdicts. A judge uses every resource at her disposal to influence people to change for the better. Thank you.
Imperative that a judge have a good judicial temperament. Being in private practice for 25 years and sometimes not representing the nicest position, I know how I would like to be treated by a judge. And I know how I'd like my clients treated by a judge. Therefore, I first believe the judge must have an ability to listen, and to listen fairly to all sides being presented to them. It allows the judge to perhaps step into the shoes of that person who is before them to see why they may think that way. The next step is for judges to refrain from opinions while the case is working its course through the system. Many times, judges have expressed their opinion, and it has forced different outcomes, which is not fair. I also believe a judge is that, as the leader of that court, needs to have control of the players in that court. When lawyers can be quite dramatic, and sometimes their conduct goes to unprofessional conduct against another side, if not unethical conduct. I believe a judge needs to be strong enough to set the temper of that court and to have zero tolerance for such behavior. That judge needs that judicial decorum not only inside the court, but outside the court. And lastly, I believe judges need not be afraid to make a timely decision. Justice delayed is justice denied. I believe I have these qualities. As my brother indicated, I'm the youngest of 8. I was bruised quite a bit by the older set. I also believe that you need to give respect, something Judge Camplice brought up, to all the parties before you. And once there is mutual respect, then that judge has done a great job. Thank you.
Knowing what I know about both courts now, we really need to jump into the 21st century. There should be not one person in Ashtabula County who should be denied access to any court for any reason. An attorney shouldn't have to be hired in every instance. And here's one example: probate court. A surviving spouse in a simple estate, nothing complicated. There should be no reason that that surviving spouse can't go online, get the tools they need to do the estate themselves. Quick, easy, and get it done. At a time, especially when they're having, obviously, some difficulties with the loss of their loved one. Technology should be making people's lives easier, not intimidating, and definitely not halting them from using the system. I don't think you need hearings for everything. You should be able to file the necessary paperwork, and if a hearing's not necessary, don't schedule a hearing. Don't drag out the process. Let's get it done by paper, what we can get done by paper in certain instances. And I'm not saying this is across the board. Every case is different, again, in every court. But if we can make the process simpler, then let's do that. Additionally, in at least one of the courts I'm running for, there are so many grants and so much special funding out there through the state and federal programs. We need to be using that more. It's hard to keep going to the general fund because we all go to the general fund of this county. There's no reason that we can't start applying for some grants, and a lot of these new programs have transportation filtered right in through the programs, so that not only are you providing a service, you're getting the person there as well. And in most instances, it's a kid. The parent's working, the parents don't have a running vehicle or a vehicle at all, and that child can have transportation to any service they need when they need it. And this is all through grants. Again, through state and federal funding. Everything needs to be used for the families in our county. Every corner checked. We need the services right here in Ashtabula County, and I think if we had the extra money through grants, we could provide our families and our children with more. Thank you very much.
As for changes to be made if elected to the bench, I am not a judge at this time. I have been in private practice for 25 years. I have had to run an office. I have also started a title agency. Again, I've had to run an office. One of the critical things to running an office is you need to know where everyone's workload is and what work they're doing. I've generally found it's best for me to get to my office before the staff gets there. And I'm usually the one locking the door after they've gone home. I think this is an imperative position that a judge needs to be in court. The court starts at 8 and ends at 4:30, and I believe the judge should be present during those hours to supervise the staff. I am not sure what changes because I am not in that position at this time. I have a few ideas of what changes I might implement, but I would rather take it and see where the attention is needed before I come up with a set of rules of what I would change. But the first thing is you show up for work and you spend the time at work. Thank you.
Having been a judge for 21 years, the first point that I want to stress is that in assuming office, there would be no need to learn or inquire or find out or to delve into where these monies are located or how to acquire them. I happen to preside in a court which has more services, more programming, more special programs geared towards the defendants and the users of the court than any court in the county. We've been very proactive in establishing programs to help people get their driver's licenses back. We have as I indicated earlier, our own house arrest program, which we've owned since 1994. We've added to that program in the years since. We now have approximately 4 or 5 different types. Our probation department has been paperless since the late 90s. We have a theft prevention class that was started. The TIP program was started with a grant. One of our probation officers is paid partially with a grant. So there will be no learning curve. There will be no need to find out where these monies are located. I've already established these working relationships. I've already maintained and cultivated them over the course of my entire public service of 30 years. My big program would be to establish a juvenile treatment and family drug court in the juvenile system. My perspective as a municipal court judge is that we need to do more in the juvenile system. I have dealt with young men and women, 18, 19 years old, who already have a lengthy juvenile record. More often than not, this is a result of drug addiction or alcohol addiction issues, or both. These addictions relate to the juvenile, and these addictions can also extend to parents or other caregivers. Intervention, as I said, must occur earlier. It must begin in the juvenile system. I think this is imperative to our justice system. I think it's imperative to the survival of our county and our families. The problem does not just affect delinquency cases where juveniles are charged with having committed criminal offenses due to involvement with drugs. It also relates to dependency cases where the parents are in danger of losing custody or have already lost custody of their children due to drug or alcohol use. The process involves the establishment of an advisory committee of key stakeholders in the community, such as licensed treatment professionals, school officials, the Children's Services Board, law enforcement, probation officers, the county prosecutor, the county public defender, guardian ad litem's, the ADAM board, etc. These community stakeholders must be afforded a forum within which they can collaboratively work together towards the goals of reducing the risk of recidivism with our offending youth and maintaining and reuniting families. Thank you.
I do want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Bar Association to having the interest to have judicial candidates appear. It's never happened in my lifetime in Ashtabula County where 3 positions are open like this. As a practitioner, we always knew these were the judges. There was no one ever new coming down the pike for any of us. So I do want to thank you for that. As a private practitioner, I do have extensive experience in the court where I would like to serve as judge. I know how to handle those cases because I've done it from the other side of the bench. And I think I would like to see that change, and I'd like to have the opportunity to serve. Thank you.
For nearly 30 years, I've been a prosecutor, I've represented clients, I've managed a private law office. I've been a judge for 21 years. I'm married, I have children, I have stepchildren. I have an adopted child, I have a grandchild. I've been a foster parent. During the adoption process of my daughter was fostered. I have shepherded my parents through their final illnesses. I have probated their estates. I am proven, I am professional, and I have the perspective no other candidate possesses. Thank you.
Mr. Camp Police, we use the system for our elderly parents and grandparents. I know what I need, and I know what my family needs. So I also am a client of what is needed in this county. I have worked in juvenile court for 18 years as the magistrate. I'm not the judge. I'm the magistrate. I have followed my judge's rules, his guidelines, and any services that he is required for our children. I believe I'm the best candidate for the job at this point, and I've been groomed to take his position. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.